When family crosses the line, my sister's unexpected takeover. I didn't think much of it at first, but looking back, that phone call was the moment everything changed. It wasn't like Mia to call me out of the blue. We hadn't exactly been close in recent years, and when her marriage fell apart, I wasn't sure what to expect. But I knew she needed something. She needed help. And I, for better or worse, was her only option. She was crying when she called. Her voice shaky, desperate. She said she didn't have anywhere else to go. That Nathan, her husband, wasn't the person she thought he was. The whole thing sounded like a mess, but I didn't need the details. I just needed to know what she wanted from me. Can I stay with you for a little while? Just until I figure things out, she asked, barely holding it together. I wanted to say no. I really did. I hadn't had anyone living with me since Emily passed. The house was quiet, too quiet. But that quiet was mine, and I had gotten used to it. Mia, on the other hand, was chaos personified. Always loud, always in motion, always stirring the pot. But I couldn't say no. Not when she was this vulnerable. She was my sister. So I told her she could stay just for a month. That was the deal. I figured I could handle it for a month. How bad could it be, right? She showed up a few days later, the doorbell ringing like an alarm. There she stood, bags in hand, yoga mat slung over her shoulder, the embodiment of a whirlwind. A part of me thought she looked like she was moving in permanently, but I brushed the thought aside. I couldn't afford to overthink this. Hey, big bro. Thanks for letting me stay, she said, her voice already heavy with the weight of the emotional storm she was carrying. She had a way of making everything seem urgent. Like everything was happening now, and I was expected to follow along. As she passed me in the doorway, her energy felt like a wave crashing through the calm I'd worked so hard to maintain. I stood there for a moment, listening to her talk a mile a minute, her words bouncing off the walls. It had been just me and Emily in this house for so long. And then just me ever since she was gone. I had gotten used to the silence, to the stillness. But Mia? She was like a storm, a loud, unpredictable force. I didn't know it then, but her arrival would turn everything upside down. For the first few days, Mia kept to herself. She spent hours on the phone, talking to friends about Nathan and their failed marriage. I didn't mind the silence. It was a break from the constant noise of her presence, a break that felt almost necessary. It was like she needed to talk, to process everything that had gone wrong, and I was fine with that. I let her vent. But then things started to shift. It was small at first, just little things I thought didn't matter. The furniture in the living room had been rearranged one morning when I came downstairs. The couch was facing a different direction, the coffee table had been moved, and the rug, our rug, was no longer in the same spot. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe she was just getting comfortable, finding a way to make the space feel more like her own. I didn't say anything. I figured it was harmless. But then, a few days later, she casually brought up the idea of redecorating. I was thinking maybe we could do something with the living room, she said one afternoon, standing by the window looking out at the backyard. The walls look a little bare. This room could use a little more color, don't you think? I froze for a moment. I wasn't sure how to respond. The living room had been Emily's and mine. We'd spent weeks picking out the furniture, finding the perfect pieces that made the house feel like home. But I didn't want to start a fight. So I said it's fine the way it is. Her eyes flicked to me like she hadn't even heard me. Maybe we should paint them. A light blue? Something more calming. My chest tightened. I think it's fine, Mia, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She didn't seem to notice the discomfort in my voice. Instead, she walked over to the bookshelf and started moving things around like she was making a decision. I could tell she wasn't just suggesting ideas anymore, she was claiming the space as hers. Later that evening, over dinner, she casually mentioned the kitchen. You know, the cabinets are kind of outdated, Mia said, swirling her spoon in her soup. Maybe we should paint them. Or even get new ones. What do you think? I felt a wave of discomfort roll over me. The kitchen was mine and Emily's. It wasn't just cabinets, it was memories. The way we'd spent hours together cooking, laughing, arguing over the right spice to use. It was the place where we had breakfast every Sunday morning, where I'd feel her hand on my shoulder as we worked side by side. But Mia didn't know that. Or maybe she didn't care. I think they're fine, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. She didn't press the issue, but the seed had been planted. And I could feel it growing every time she walked through the house, rearranging things in ways I hadn't asked for. I could feel her turning everything into something new, something hers. Before I share what happened next, the moment when I finally couldn't hold back anymore, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Have you ever had a family member who didn't understand your boundaries? Drop a comment below and let me know how you handled it. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that like button because this tale is about to take a turn you won't expect. The tension between Mia and me grew by the day. I was trying so hard to stay calm, to give her space, but the little changes, the little comments were starting to add up. Every time I saw her casually move something, suggest a new idea, or look around the house like it wasn't mine anymore, I felt a small part of me cracking. It wasn't just her living here anymore. It was like she was taking over. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just uncomfortable. I was losing control of my own home. I tried to keep my distance, tried to stay calm and remind myself that Mia was just going through a tough time. She was still my sister, after all, and I needed to be there for her. But as the days passed, my patience wore thin. Little things began to pile up. The way she moved the furniture, the way she suggested changing the kitchen, the way she seemed to believe she could make decisions about this house without even asking me. But it wasn't until I found her in the attic that I realized just how far she'd gone. I had been upstairs, going through some old files in my office, when I heard the soft thud of footsteps in the hallway. Then silence. It wasn't unusual for Mia to wander around the house. But for some reason, this time, something felt off. I walked down the hall and noticed the attic door cracked open. I don't know why, but I felt this nagging sense of dread as I approached. I pushed the door open, and there she was, rummaging through old boxes like she had every right to. "Mia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She froze, looking up at me with wide eyes, her hands still buried in a box filled with old trinkets. "Oh, hey, I was just going through some things. You know, stuff you don't need anymore." Her voice was too casual, too indifferent. I stepped closer, my heart racing. "What exactly are you doing with those things?" I asked, my voice tight with barely contained frustration. "Just sorting through them," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I figured you could probably donate some of this stuff. I mean, you're not really using it, right?" That comment hit me like a punch in the stomach. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she was going through things that belonged to Emily, or the way she was acting like it was just junk. It wasn't just stuff. It was everything I had left of her. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Mia, these aren't just things. They're memories. Emily's things." My voice cracked, the weight of my words sinking in. I could feel the anger building inside me, the frustration, the sadness, all mixing together. She looked at me, her face suddenly blank. "I know, but..." "No, you don't know." I cut her off, my anger spilling out now, unchecked. "You can't just come into my home, start rearranging everything, and then treat my wife's things like they're trash. You don't get to do that, Mia." Her expression shifted, but it wasn't remorse. It was annoyance, like I was overreacting. "I'm just trying to help, Christian. Don't you think it's time you let go of all this? It's just stuff. You're living in the past." That was it. I had had enough. But it wasn't until later that night, when I walked into the living room to find Mia sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, that I realized just how deep the problem ran. I glanced down at the coffee table and there it was, an old jewelry box. My heart stopped. It was Emily's. "Mia," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Where did you get that?" She didn't look up. "Oh, this? I thought I'd sell it. You know, make a little extra cash. I figured you wouldn't mind. It's just jewelry, right? Doesn't really mean anything." The air felt thick. My mind raced as I took in what she had just said. She was trying to sell Emily's jewelry. My wife's jewelry. The same jewelry she had worn on our wedding day. The same jewelry I had held in my hand just weeks before she passed. The thought of it being sold without my knowledge, without my permission, it felt like a knife in my chest. I couldn't stand it anymore. I stood there, frozen for a moment, trying to hold myself together. "No, you don't get to do that, Mia. You don't get to just take things and sell them. Not this." She finally looked up at me, but her eyes were cold. "It's just stuff, Christian. It doesn't matter." But it did matter. It mattered more than anything else in the world. And in that moment, I realized what was happening. Mia wasn't just staying with me. She wasn't just helping or trying to get through her own pain. No, she was taking control, taking over my life, my home, my memories. I felt like I was losing everything. Not just my wife, but now my sister too. Before I share what happened next, the moment I finally drew the line and put my foot down, I want to hear from you, my amazing viewers. Have you ever had someone cross a boundary like this? Have you ever felt your home, your personal space, being invaded? Drop a comment below and tell me how you handled it. And if you're with me on standing up for what's right, hit that like button and stay tuned, because what happens next will blow your mind. I had to act. I couldn't let this slide anymore. Mia had crossed a line and I was done. I wasn't going to let her continue to take what was mine, what was ours, without a fight. I just needed to figure out how to make her understand that this was no longer about her getting back on her feet. This was about respect and about reclaiming my life. The breaking point came when I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Mia had gone too far. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine, that she was just staying here temporarily. The house was mine. The memories were mine, and I needed them back. I waited until the evening, when the house was quiet, and found Mia in the kitchen, sipping her tea like nothing was wrong. I stood in the doorway, looking at her, my heart heavy with everything I had kept inside for so long. Mia, I started, my voice calm but firm. I've had enough. She didn't even look up from her mug. What's your problem now? She asked, a hint of annoyance in her voice, like I was the one being unreasonable. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It's time for you to leave. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep acting like you own this house. I've been patient with you, but it's over. She finally looked up at me, her eyes widening with disbelief. You can't be serious. I am, I said, my voice colder now. You've crossed a line. You've been moving my things around, trying to change things I hold dear. And now you're selling Emily's jewelry like it doesn't matter. I've had enough. Her face flushed, but there was no guilt, no remorse, only anger. You don't understand, she spat, standing up and taking a step toward me. You don't get it. I'm just trying to help you. You're stuck in the past and you won't let go. It's just stuff, Christian. It doesn't mean anything. No, I said, shaking my head. You don't get it. This is my life, our life, and you don't have the right to just take it over. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. You're being dramatic. I stood my ground. I've already made up my mind. I need you to leave, Mia. Her face twisted in anger, but then something shifted. She grabbed her phone and stormed off toward the living room, her voice rising with each word. You're kicking me out? Fine. I'll call Mom and Dad. Maybe they'll understand how unreasonable you're being. Within an hour, my parents arrived. They didn't get it. They never did. They walked in, clearly on Mia's side, their faces filled with confusion and concern. You don't have to do this, Christian, my mom said, her voice soft, trying to reason with me. Mia's been through so much. You can't just kick her out like this. I didn't answer. Couldn't. They didn't know the whole story. They didn't know about the jewelry. They didn't know how far Mia had gone. And I wasn't about to let them make excuses for her anymore. I have proof, I said quietly. I pulled out my phone, showing them the security footage. The grainy video displayed Mia, in broad daylight, slipping Emily's jewelry into a bag and walking out of the house without a second thought. My parents froze. My mom's eyes widened with disbelief, her hand over her mouth. My father's jaw clenched, and for the first time, I saw real anger in his eyes. Mia, did you? He started, his voice low, shaky. Mia was silent for a long moment, her face pale. Then, she opened her mouth, her voice rising to meet the moment. I didn't mean it like that, she said, her tone defensive, desperate. I thought it would help him move on. It's just jewelry. It's just stuff. It doesn't mean anything anymore. But I couldn't listen to her excuses anymore. Not after everything. My heart had already broken once, losing Emily. I wasn't about to let Mia take even more from me. I'm done, I said firmly. I'm done making excuses. I want you to leave. Now. Mia's eyes were filled with tears, but her anger was still there. She didn't say anything else. She just turned and walked out, her shoulders stiff, her head held high like she was the one who had been wronged. It was over. The house felt different when she was gone. Quieter, yes, but also, for the first time in months, it felt like mine again. Felt like I had my life back, the way it was meant to be. But it wasn't just the space that had changed, it was me. I had taken control back. I had drawn the line and I had stood my ground. I didn't feel relief immediately. There was still sadness. There was still loss. I hadn't wanted things to get this far with Mia. She was my sister, and now it felt like that connection was broken. I wasn't sure if it would ever heal. But one thing was clear. I couldn't keep letting her take over my life. I stood in the quiet house, the silence surrounding me. But this time, it wasn't oppressive. It was peaceful. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again.